Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Travis Dykes, and today we're going over 5 essential bass tones that every bass player should know in under 5 minutes. So let's jump into it. So before we go into our first tone, one essential thing you need to make sure you know is that with bass, tone is all in your hands. So all of the different tones that we're going over today are gonna be ones that you can achieve with your hands and not pedals or anything you have to go by. So the first tone of bass that everybody should master should be pretty obvious: fingerstyle. If you know how to play with your hand, like with your fingers, that's what I mean, like being able to pluck with your right hand and getting that tone. So you're probably saying, Travis, but that's like, I learned how to play that when I first started playing bass. But the trick of the matter is learning where to pluck with your right hand to achieve great tone. So if I pluck closer towards the bridge, I get kind of more of a punchier, thuddier, sharper, and more staccato sound. When I play in the middle, kind of gives me more even sound between the two. You can make it a little punchier if you wanted to, but it's pretty even when you're right there on top of the pickups. And then when I pluck closer to the neck or right on top of the neck, it gives me this really rounded tone that almost sounds like a synth bass. So with fingerstyle, there are 3 essential tones that you can get just by where you pluck on the bass. Here's some examples so you can hear what I mean. Now the next tone is the slap tone. And if you ever heard and seen somebody slap, honestly, this is something every bass player should at least know a little bit. The way that you get a really accurate slap tone, at least in my opinion, is when you slap closer to the neck. You go right there to that bottom, the highest fret, you know, and then you slap right there. It kind of, for me, it's always made my thumb a lot more accurate because my thumb, if I go through the string, it kind of catches sometime when I'm trying to pull it back out. If you slap closer to that neck, then if your finger or your thumb goes through the string, it just hits the neck. And so it's easier to always come back up and you never have that big of an issue. I'm sure there's some other ways of doing it. Let me know in the comments what you guys think, if you have any particular ways that you slap clean. And this is just the way I've done it. So don't think this is like the end-all technique. This is just my personal preference. So here's an example of this slap tone. So tone number 3 is going to be the picking style. I've heard over the years like, oh, well, it's only guitarists that play with a pick. Guys, playing with a pick is actually super fun. You know, my channel's mostly about like funk, R&B, gospel, that whole vibe. I've seen some really dope funk players, funk bass players to be exact, use a pick, and it just like blows my mind of like the tone that you get from it. It's insane. So this is a pick that I use. It's like a 60 millimeter. It's not super thick, but it gives you like a really cool tone. A lot of times bass players like to get a thicker one because it plays through the string easier, but this is just the one I've had. I play a little guitar, so this is just the one I had laying around. But what's really cool is that when you play, you get this tone that kind of is really thuddy, and it really kind of has a lot of attack to it that you can't usually get with just your fingers, because your fingers kind of have like more of a soft attack versus a hard attack. And hard attack, it sounds like I said heart attack. If you're not sure how to use this, honestly, you just, what I've always done is I made like a gun, you know, with my hands, and I pulled my finger in like that, and I placed my pick right there, and then just place my thumb over it. And that's kind of my starting point. Also, make sure you don't have it choked up too far back like that where you have all this, because then it's gonna fall out of your hand easier. It'll almost fall in my hand right there. But if you go closer in like this, where it's a little bit less of the pick showing like this, I don't know if you can see that, then you have more control of the pick when you're playing, so you can control exactly what tones and what you're playing with your right hand. So here's an example using the pick on the bass when I play. All right, now the fourth tone is the muted tone. I'm sure you guys have heard of the muted tone. If you haven't, all it is that you just mute the strings on your bass. Basically, instead of letting them ring out, like if you just played a string like open, instead of letting it ring out, what you do is let either your left or your right hand you use to mute it. A lot of players use their right hand. And basically what it is where you put your hand on the bass and you use your thumb to play. And it kind of gives it like this muted kind of upright tone like this. But there's another way of doing it that I like to do a lot of, is using my left hand versus my right hand, so I can have a good bit of attack with my right hand still and play it like normal, but have that muted tone, which sounds like this. All I'm doing is just playing a note, and I'm using these extra fingers to kind of lay on that string that I'm playing to kind of give it a muted tone. When I do that, it gives me a lot of control of how muted my string will be. And when you're doing it with your right hand, you do have a little bit of control, but it kind of limits how much or how fast you can play with your thumb. So now one of my favorite techniques that are not necessarily the most popular is the pick muted tone. Basically is where you use a pick like this, and you mute with your left hand. It really is one of my favorite tones. I use it all the time in sessions and different things like that. So basically it gives you a lot of attack, but it gives it a thuddy sound because you're muting it. It's kind of like a cool thing because you can control how thuddy it is with your left hand, and you also have a ton of attack with your right hand. It's just putting these two together, it just makes it so much fun. Here's an example of what it sounds like. So after really honing in on these tones, I suggest you go check out this video right here where you can learn how to get the best tone out of your bass.